Hey, it's Emma Romano here, founder of the Thrive and Life Foundation, self-healing coach, and the midwife to your personal alchemy.
I am Kelly Bowen, founder of the Heaven Within Foundation, CEO of Lifestyle Finance Australia, finance expert, life and business coach.
And you are listening to Inspired Conversations,
where we talk about the things that really matter. Yes, we go there.
We share together what's exciting us, inspiring us, and having the most profound impact on our lives and our clients' lives. And we do this to elevate and inspire you.
We cover it all from life, body, love, relationships, trauma healing, addictions, business, money, and all things woo-woo.
So sit back, relax,
and get ready to be inspired and laugh the fuck out loud.
Hey everybody, it's Emma Romano here from Inspired Conversations. I have got the most amazing, incredible woman today. I only met Melanie like a few weeks ago. And we were at an event where I got to public speak and talk about business and stuff like that cool stuff in this travel business that we're in. Little side hustle there. And I just got to know Mel. I just fell in love with her, to be honest. Like, she came up and she had a little chat with me. It was a really honest chat with me and it was beautiful. And I just love when women can get together and be super vulnerable with each other. You know, if a woman comes up to me and is super vulnerable, I'm like, you're my friend for life, babe. Like, you got me at vulnerable. And I have just recently gotten to know Melanie's story. So what actually caught my eye was that her beautiful mum is going through some health issues at the moment. And Melanie was like, oh, babe, that's like nothing. Let me tell you my story. And I'm like, fuck, I really want you on Inspired Conversations. And the reason I want Melanie on Inspired Conversations, who, by the way, is the owner and founder, you guys need to look this up, I See You Too Fashion. And it's for people with a disability, and they help them design and create and be part of the fashion industry. I mean, that's incredible. Plus, she's got a whole lot of other things. Plus, she's a mummy. She's all kinds of things. She's incredible. But I really I love it when I get to speak to women who have been broken. And I mean, I started to get emotional. I mean, really broken. And I don't think there's one woman here or one man listening to here who hasn't been in that position where you've been really fucking broken. And sometimes you think, is there anything better for me? Or is this it? This is why I want to bring Melanie on, because I want you to listen to her story. Get your tissues out. She typed it to me the other day and I was just like, oh my God, I think I just bawled my eyes out for an hour in such reverence of this woman's trauma, but mostly how she's living her life today. And it's not perfect. Don't ever anyone sit there listen to us and go, oh, everything's perfect. That's bullshit. No one's freaking perfect. That is a load of crap. No one's perfect. Often when people say, oh, these people on podcasts, these people, they're all perfect, it's kind of people's excuses to say, I can't be that because I'm not there. So I'm just going to wallow in my self-shit. No. Don't wallow in yourself shit, because Melanie is here. Melanie Eyels is right here to tell you her story of how she really pulled herself out of the muck. And she didn't just have one muck. She had, there's a story. There is a timeline, guys. It is huge. So Melanie, I'm just going to shut the fuck up. Please welcome, beautiful. And I'm going to let you know in this, we don't edit anything. So if we make a mistake or we just, oh well, the audience have us at our rawest and our real. And that's probably why we've gotten to number 70 in the entire world of podcasts.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? And it's because of just conversations like this. They're so organic. They're so raw. We don't send interview questions to anybody. I just say, get on, let's have a chat. In fact, I've got my organic, ceremonial cacao with me right here. You'll hear me sipping away during it. My love, Melanie, I'm going to leave it with you, babe. Tell us your story. First off, where are you at now?
Where am I at now? Well,
So
first and
you're a
foremost,
mama.
I'm meeting amazing, incredible people like yourself. Thank you for your wonderful invitation to be able to be a part of this podcast. I am very much like yourself, all about inspiring people that I don't care where your circumstances are now, you can get better. You can come from this, it can get better. You can do better. You can change your life. And I'm a walking testimony to that. I'm a walking testimony to that.
Yep.
So my story, like many, I'm 51 years old, so it goes back 51 years ago. And there was a poem actually I once wrote about talking about when children are born. They're born these beautiful, perfect little beings who don't know fear or love or hate. They don't know any of those kind of emotions. They're born with complete trust into who they're given to.
Mm-hmm.
And as we grow up and develop, things begin to change. We get introduced to things that I believe human beings should never actually know. And some of those things are fear, and some of those things are hate, and some of those things are, feeling like they're worth nothing. I don't believe that human beings should ever have to experience that. I do believe we can grow from it. But I think that every human being should be given the right to nurture and love. And from when I was young, I grew up in domestic violence. I grew up in, some of the most horrendous circumstances that you could imagine. My mum went through domestic violence to the point where she was unrecognisable by her own parents.
God, babe.
So as a little girl growing up, my mum did everything, and I want to make this very clear, and I will state this to this day. My mum is my greatest hero and the reason I am where I am today. My mum never gave up no matter what was thrown at her, and there was the most cruelest things in life that were thrown at her. Yet she seemed to be a lady who was able to get up and say, I don't just accept this as this. I'm not going to just believe that this is all I have in life. This is not where my journey stops. And what she instilled in me was an incredible amount of strength. But as a little girl growing up, seeing my mum going through this, I remember feeling so disempowered about what I could change and do. I was so little, I couldn't stop what was happening to my mum.
Yeah.
I couldn't prevent it. And I remember crying to God as a little girl and begging him to just make it stop, to just make it all go away. And that was probably the foundation of where my faith was when I was a little girl then, and it's a huge part of my story. And I went through domestic violence and witnessing domestic violence up until I was 15 years old, at the last time in which a man struck my mother, and I did hit that man and knocked him out cold at 15.
You go, girl.
And I just had enough. I got to the place where I had enough. I was not willing to allow another person to harm my mum again. I was just not willing.
Melanie, can I ask you, are you an only child?
I am. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
that's
I am.
amazing. You and I have very similar story. I'm an only child.
Yeah.
And my mother was a victim of domestic violence as well, from two people actually. My father, but also her mother.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And I was the one who protected her. And I remember, you just reminded me of a story, and I want to share this. This is like, everybody has a choice. It's not our fault of how we grew up, but it's definitely our responsibility of how we live our lives from that moment. And I think I chose, because my mother was very strong, like yours, Mel, but probably just didn't make the choice that I can leave. You know, grew up in a very Catholic way. I mean, my mum's 80 this year, right? So this is back. And then there's a lot of shame around leaving.
Yeah.
You know, so I remember when my mum was dating this guy and I was 9, and I hated this guy, hated him. He didn't energetically feel right to me.
Mm.
And I used to watch him. He was a narcissist, right? Anyway, one day I opened the door because he was taking my mum out for an evening, and my mum got all dressed up and he turned up in shorts and t-shirt. And I opened up the front door. I said, "You're not taking my mother out like that." And I closed the door in his face.
Yeah.
And he never came back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
go up, Mel. Yeah, this is amazing. I'm just
It's-
piecing all these things together going,
that is
restorators.
so incredible. That's just, because, you know, at that moment, it is where we take our power back and we say,
Yes.
no, it's not going to happen anymore. I'm not going to allow this to happen anymore. As a young child, we can't stop it. But once we get to a certain age, we make a decision, and it's a definite decision of this is not going to be my life. This is not going to happen, and I'm going to protect those I love. And for me, that was so empowering. So I'm going to go through a couple of dot points just to give a bit of information about some of the traumas that I experienced. Through domestic violence, I also did, unfortunately, not always keep myself safe. I wasn't always good at protecting myself. And I think that's something really important I want to touch base on, because what happened was it put me in relationships that weren't actually safe. And that was because I was looking to be loved. I was looking to be accepted. I wanted to be approved, because I had grown up where I was told I was worthless, I was nothing. My mum had always tried to build me up. Unfortunately, some of the people that were in our lives did not do that. And in fact, took great joy in making sure that they, you know, being told that I wouldn't be good enough to take their last name, that I was, you know, I had no hope I was going nowhere in life. I'd never be anything. Nobody'd ever want me. And there was just this definite refusal to accept that as a child and as an adolescent. I just refused to do that. I just refused to accept that this was all that life could be. And I do believe that that was a God-given gift. I will tell you that. I really do believe that resilience and the belief that love can exist in circumstances that are showing that love is not available is a gift from God. So I couldn't tell you that story without sharing that with you, because that was a huge part of where I am today. And so I guess that refusal to be like that, it also had a double-edged sword. So why I wouldn't accept that that was all that was available, because I hadn't been exposed to healthy love from a male, I had developed, I guess, like a Disney kind of love, you know? So I was always looking for somebody to save me, and I was always looking for somebody who I thought would protect me, which led to making some very, very bad decisions in that, because, you know, looking for the handsome prince who was the perfect one, looking for the one that was going to, you know, do all those things, listening to the pretty words, and then finding myself in situations that were nothing like that. So at 14, I was raped by a friend who was 33 years old. At 19, I was raped in a relationship that resulted in a huge amount of trauma. I was away from my family. I was in another state. I couldn't get back. And I was subjected to a lot of abuse over a 3-month period because I couldn't get back. He used to lock me in the house. I couldn't get out of the house. I had a 2-year-old son with me at the time. So it was pretty awful. And then I went on in life. I had lots of broken relationships, not only just in romantic relationships, but I just had trouble connecting with people because I'd grown up and I just learnt to survive. So that was what I lived in. I lived in survival mode. In 1999, let's wind the clock right forward here. In 1999, no, it was, let me think. No, it was earlier than that. Oh my gosh, I'm getting my time frames mixed up here. It was that's right. 1999, I met my husband, and, things didn't go very well for us. It was a very fast romance, and it was beautiful, and it was wonderful for the first 6 months. Then we got married. We got married within less than 6 months of knowing each other. It was a real whirlwind romance, and it ended in divorce 6 months after that. Mm-hmm. I was not able to deal with a marriage due to all the trauma that I had been through. I really just couldn't cope with it all. In 2002, my husband and I actually got back together, got remarried after 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
And went on to have our beautiful children. We've been now together 22 years.
Melanie,
Yeah,
that's
so
amazing. So you met,
yes.
you married like 6 months. 6 months later, you divorced, and 3 years later, you're married again. Have you got a good marriage now?
Look, we do, and it's an unusual marriage. We actually don't live together, so we don't live together, and haven't for a number of years. And to be very honest, it's what works for us, which leads me to a lot of our next conversation. Like,
Oh, I can't wait.
is it really is about, if something doesn't work one way, it's about looking at other options of how you can make things work. My husband's a great man. He's a wonderful man, and I can proudly say now I'm a wonderful woman. I've got a lot to give. I love with all my heart. I'm not perfect. I make my mistakes, so does he. But how do you make two imperfect people work in a situation where there are those extra things in life that other people may not have maybe come up against as much, in regards of trauma and dealing with it? He came from a home where his parents have always been together. He grew up on a farm with his brothers and quite a stable character. I come from a very traumatic background with no stability whatsoever, and really didn't know how to put those two worlds together. And one of the things with trauma is that it can stay with you for a long time. And sometimes when you're in relationships, it can be really hard to manage. So I didn't want to leave my husband again because I love him, right? He's a cool guy. I kind of like hanging out with him. He's cool, but I couldn't live with him. I just couldn't live with him in the same space. I'm a person who needs my own space, and needs a lot of alone time. And that's part of my healing journey, is
Yeah,
being able to do that.
so I'm a trauma expert. So when we go into that, it's actually we feel safer in our own. It'd be stuff sitting in your vagus nerve. So we hold all our trauma in our vagus nerve. And it's like a trauma response. It's like, I'm safe here on my own, because you could probably self-regulate your nervous system better on your own than you can with someone else. Because growing up, you and I, we didn't just have to regulate our own nervous system. We also had to regulate our mothers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is where, for those people listening to this podcast who have seen their mothers been in a bad situation, our mothers, doesn't matter what kind of relationship you have with your mother now, they are the very first person you fall in love with as a child.
Yeah.
And I mean, have you ever seen a toddler with their mother? Doesn't matter what that mother says, that toddler just wraps their little arms around that mum and they just love them, right?
Yeah.
And we feel solely responsible for the outcome and the welfare of our parents. And I tell you why. Because it's animalistic. If your mother or the primary caretaker, it could be a grandmother, could be a carer, anything, they're not happy, we go into a trauma response of, how am I going to get my needs met if their needs aren't being met?
Yeah.
So we go into, I won't be loved, no connection, no food, no shelter.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and this is where we will lose ourselves as a person from a very young age to people please and maneuver to make mummy or daddy or whoever's the primary carer happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
big shit, isn't it? It's big shit.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. And you're so right, Emma. Like, I went to a trauma therapist and stuff like that, because the trauma is huge. So my diagnosis is CPTSD. From the amount of trauma that had happened. But look, I want to say to people, there's a thing about trauma. Trauma can also be hugely empowering. I just want people to know that. Like, there is a positive way to take the things that you learned during a trauma state and utilize those to help other people. And that's exactly what I've done. I lived in fear for so long that it almost became my best friend. It really did. It was And it carried over to such a point that I was fearful. I got to the stage where when I had my children, I had postnatal depression, and I didn't realize I had postnatal depression, but I
Yeah.
did. And it was then when trauma really came into play in my life, because what happened then was I developed panic attacks. And I couldn't even go. I remember one time, Emma, I went down the street, and I was at a shopping centre, and all of a sudden I felt like the whole shopping centre was closing in on me. And I just ran, and I stayed in a public cubicle for over an hour. I wouldn't come out. I could hardly breathe. And I was probably suffering from panic attacks with the birth of my first child and second child, up to 20 times a day. I would be like that. Like, it was huge.
Oh, Melanie.
Yeah, I lived like that for about 4 years. So I wouldn't go
Okay.
out anywhere. I wouldn't do anything because I was just petrified. What I didn't understand was the trauma, and I touched base with some of those things that I went through when I was younger, was that the trauma when you give birth, when you go through menopause or life changes, trauma will rise. Trauma will rise. So in particularly CPTSD, where you've got memories that are locked in that you can't release. And so I didn't know that. So I thought I was losing my mind for about 4 years. I thought, and I was too scared to tell anyone because I thought they'd lock me up and I wouldn't be around my kids and people think I was crazy. So I kept that all inside.
So you suffered in silence.
I did, yeah.
Trauma
And
response.
yeah, and it was a huge mistake because really I could have been released from that a lot sooner. But I wouldn't step out because I was afraid. But remembering fear was my best friend. That's what I knew, right? And yeah, so because that had been my response to everything in life. So we have a natural flight or fight response, as we often talk about, and freeze is another response. In my case, I was a fighter. So, the more that I was traumatized, the more fearful, the more I fought it, and fought it and fought it and fought it and fought it and fought it. But I came to a place one day where I stopped fighting. So at the age of 14, I attempted to take my life after being raped. At the age of 19, I was raped again. And at the age of 27, I attempted to take my life again. I wasn't trying to hurt anybody. I just wanted the pain to stop. And I lived in turmoil, just turmoil. And I wanted the pain and the cycle of trauma to stop. And I just didn't know how to do that. Once I got married, going back to the hubby again, once I got married, God provided me with this incredibly stable man that just would not give up on me. And I tried everything. To make him give up, and he just blatantly refused to give up.
Aren't we horrible like that? Aren't we horrible to these really great, beautiful, centered, masculine energy men that come in? And they're here, they're like, babe, I'm right here. And we're like, oh, I'll test you, motherfucker.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the biggest bitch. I'm going to test you. I'm going to prove that you're an asshole like everyone else. Aren't we horrible? I know, horrible.
And that's exactly what I did.
Melanie, my family call my husband's name's Anthony. They call him Saint Anthony, right?
That would be Craig too.
Yeah.
I do exactly the same things. Like, I did. And this man just refused to give up. No matter how many times I left, he just waited till I came back. No matter how many times I told him he just walked through the fire with me. And it was an incredible journey. It took him. Now we've been together this time. Like I said, we got remarried in 2002. We've been together 21, 22 years this year, right? Since our second time. We've actually known each other 26 years, right? It took him the best part of 20 years to convince me he loved me.
And I want people who are listening to this, it didn't take him 20 years to convince her. It actually took her 20 years to believe him.
That's correct. Yeah, that's
And
exactly
I
right.
also want to really concrete in people's minds, trauma, you can heal trauma. You can heal all
Yeah.
kinds, any kind. You do not have to have trauma. And
Yeah.
one of the greatest things about trauma is this, and anybody who's looking for trauma healing, if you talk about the trauma, you will not heal it.
Yeah.
You will not heal it. So, talk therapy doesn't work with trauma. Talk therapy works a lot greatly with grief and things like that, does not work with trauma because trauma is a sneaky little fucker. So, with us, we can heal only 80% of our trauma because 20% of it is actually from our mother's placenta from 4 generations back. And that has been proven scientifically.
Mm.
So you need to work with somebody who does unconscious and energetic work. If anybody is really looking into working and healing their trauma, please private message me because this is what I teach. And I have over 350 practitioners worldwide that I can hook you up with. I just want everyone to know that you do not have to sit in trauma because Melanie was sitting in trauma her whole life. You know who my best friend was? Shame.
Yeah.
Shame was my best mate. I knew shame like no end. So I would wake up in the morning with shame. I'd go to bed with shame. I knew shame. I was brought up Catholic. And us Catholics, the minute you're born, you just sprinkle a little bit of shame on you and guilt. I'm not even freaking kidding. And I was shamed a lot for looking like my father. I was a very confused child because my father left at 10 months old where he beat the shit out of my mum. He was a horrible bloke. Horrible to me, horrible to my kids, everything. Anyway, I haven't seen him for about 10, 11 years and it's been the most me in my power and my boundaries not speaking to him because he just can't change and I can't have that toxicity around my boys or around my family. So it works very well for us. But I was told as a little girl, like my mum would say to me, darling, you're just beautiful, you're perfect, I love you. But then I would hear in the next breath, you're just like your father. Oh, look, you got the same color of hair as your father. You walk like your father. And it'd be like, that bastard. So I was very convinced. Now, my mum, in the way she was saying it from her point of view, she wasn't telling me I'm a bastard, but that's what I was collecting in my little data of information. In my 2-year-old self, 3-year-old self was, he's a bastard and I look just like him. So I had a lot of shame. I had a lot of shame around myself. And this might really shock people. So I'm 51, right? I'm the same age as Melanie. And it's only been in the last 3 years that I have walked around in bathers in front of people. I have never, ever, ever been to the beach in bathers. I have never been to a swimming pool in bathers. Never. In fact, my husband and I, this is getting really personal, but I want to share this. I held so much shame that I couldn't even stand naked in front of my husband. It's only been the last few years because I've been resolving and dissolving the shame and the trauma. So it is absolutely doable. And I look at photos of me in my 20s and I was a hot little number, right? In 30s, I was a hot little number, but I had so much shame. I had this smoking body, didn't know it at the time. But it doesn't matter about what you look like. It's really depending on how you feel about yourself. It's huge. And I just wanted to put that in there to inspire the listeners that there is always something that you can do. You don't have to sit in any of your trauma or any of the shame because the conflict is this. Why it doesn't sit well in the body or the mind is this. It's a conflict of values. You hold a high moral value that you are love, you are God, God is within you. But then you have this man-made thing of like, you're disgusting, you should look like this, you had that, you're horrible. Do you get me? It's a conflict of values and conflict of ethics and morals. And that's what puts us into PTSD and depression, anxiety, all those things. And it's so good when you know it's that and you go, shit, I'm in conflict with myself because I've been trying to kid myself my whole life that I'm this shit thing. Whereas innately, I know I'm far from that shit thing. I'm actually fucking glorious,
Yeah.
because as you know, Melanie, God doesn't make mistakes.
No, he doesn't. No,
Humans
he
do.
doesn't.
Humans
Yeah.
do, but God doesn't make a mistake. When he makes it, he's not sitting there going, I'm going to fuck you up. It was the it's the choice of freedom that fucked us up, basically.
Yeah.
That's my little rant for the day. Sorry, Melanie. Keep going, babe.
So no, thank you for that, Emma. I'm loving listening to your story because I really relate to you. You're so right in what you're saying. Like, you're so right in what you're saying. Exactly. When I went through trauma therapy, the trauma therapist said to me then that, in the case of talking about CPTSD, which is what I was diagnosed with, it's when the trauma is so extreme the body can't actually process it. And so it actually goes, it's actually a chemical reaction in the body. It actually goes into there's a blocker in the brain, so that it's there for us to survive in a traumatic situation. So what ideally is supposed to happen is like in 2006, I was in a very bad accident. I was pregnant with my second daughter, and we went 30 meters down a cliff, and the car rolled over 1.5 times. And my 2-year-old was in the back seat. My husband was driving, and I was 34 weeks pregnant. That was a horrific accident. It was horrific. The car was total. There was nothing left of it, and they expected to find everybody dead because it was horrendous. And the car, when it landed, I'm going to take you on this journey, Em, because this is exactly what you're talking about, where God is and just how this actually happened. I remember being in the car as we were going down the cliff, and I remember putting my hand on my tummy, and I remember saying to God, please just take care of my children. And I closed my eyes because at that moment I did not think I was going to live through that accident. All right. And I just closed my eyes. I said, this is it. I'm not walking out of this accident. And then the next minute, I felt my head hit with the top of the car, then the window, then the side of the door, and then a boulder came through the door, splitting my head open. And I remember at that point, I just went, God, make it stop. Please just make it stop. And I kid you not, at that moment, it was like the car was picked up and placed down, and it just stopped.
Yeah.
It just stopped. And my husband looked over at me, and he saw that I was bleeding. He thought our daughter was dead. She wasn't. She was asleep, and she didn't wake up. All right. She slept through the entire accident. She was left completely unharmed, but she slept through the entire accident, so she has no memory of that accident at all. God was so tremendously good. So tremendously good. It was a horrific accident. It really was. My husband went to get out of the car, and we felt it go, and we were like, uh-oh. And I just said to just stop there. I rang my friend, and I asked her to pray, and then I rang the ambulance. Right, because I knew at that moment there was only one person that was going to save me, and that wasn't going to be any man. That was going to be God.
Amen.
So I prayed.
Yeah.
I prayed. And so when they came, the car was actually being held up by the wire of a barbed wire fence, not the post, the wire, and it was half over another 30-meter cliff that would have killed us because it was a straight drop. All right. So God is so good. And this is what I want to talk about. This is what I talk about. Now, that's a traumatic event, right? It's traumatic. It happens, right? And I was extremely traumatized after that. I really was. But there was one thing I realized in that moment, and I kept coming back to, was that prayer, that reach out call to God, and that it did stop. It did stop. It did change. And that's the thing about trauma. I started to realize that once you realize that trauma can stop, it doesn't have to keep going. All right.
Oh,
You can
Melanie,
make the decision.
Just music to my ears.
You can make the trauma stop. You can say, no, I don't want to be like this anymore, and do the work you need to go through that. And yeah, it can be scary, but it doesn't have to be as scary as you think. You don't have to live like a prisoner in your own mind. You don't. You don't have to be a prisoner to your own mind. And look, I'm a big believer of this. There are some traumas that the human mind was never intended to deal with. And our mind, as a safety mechanism, sometimes will lock that away. If it's not directly impacting your life, don't open Pandora's box. Leave the door closed.
100%.
Don't open pathways to things you don't need to. You do not need to know and understand every single thing and moment of your past to make you whole. You don't, because you're not in your past anymore. It's finished. It's over. What is going to rehashing it, going over it, going to change in it? Absolutely nothing.
Girl,
The
you are
time
singing
has
my
already passed.
freaking, you're singing my song. So this is the biggest problem when people go into therapy, right? You know, when you can be feeling great and happy, you know your day, like you can be having a great day, and then all of a sudden you just feel a little bit lost or low, or you're not as feeling as high as what you were maybe 10 minutes ago. This is where people fuck it up. They try and figure out why. They try and associate it to something. Oh, is it because of this or because of that? What it is, when you're in a good space, your unconscious mind and your vagus nerve. So your vagus nerve runs from the top of your head all the way down your body, right? Either side of your spine. And it sends all the messages to your body. It's freaking brilliant, the vagus nerve. What happens is when you're in a good space, your unconscious mind and your vagus nerve goes, this is a good time to push through any old, like some old traumas or some old grief or whatever it might be. We just got to push it through. And it will take literally about 90 seconds. Anything more than 90 seconds, it's because we've fucked it up. We start overthinking, is this because my father beat my mum in 1971? Or is this because my grandma... We've spiraled now.
Yeah.
We've missed the plot. We've missed the opportunity to heal it. So the greatest thing is to sit there and go, thank you, body. Thank you, mind. I must be in a really good place because I'm able to release this now.
Yeah.
This is great. I'm empowering myself. Sit down,
110%.
you know, have a cup of tea,
110%.
have a cry, have a bath, go for a walk. Just don't even think about it. You don't even have to feel into it. Your body will do what it needs to do. So will your mind. But when you start over analyzing shit, that is what we're overthinkers. Overthinkers fuck shit up.
Yep. Oh my gosh, it's so true, Emma. Oh my gosh, it's so true. Because once I realized I didn't need to open Pandora's box, guess what started to happen? I started to heal.
Babe.
I started to heal. I started to heal. And I realized that, you know what, there's a lot of boxes there. I don't even need to open them because all I need to do is shift them out. That's it. I just need to shift them out. And even in that, it's not something that I have to do. One of the great things about being a Christian is that I can focus on the fact that God does that work. And I just realized, like, you know, I don't need to do that work. That's God. God will clean the house. I just need to be open to the cleaning, you know. And
I love this, Melanie, because it's not just Christians either. So I just spent a month in Muslim countries, right? So in Egypt, everywhere. And I was going into mosques and really connecting in with their type of religion. They're a beautiful religion. And they call God Allah.
Yeah.
And they do the same.
Yeah.
They're like, Allah is good. Like, Allah will do it. The less we get out of the way, we just got to be an open channel. Like, let God do it. Like, you can literally imagine God shining a light down into your crown chakra all the way down your body with a big shovel and just scooping shit out. Just scoop it out. And you know, there's something that I love to do, and I love doing this I work with a lot of families and children. And I always give everybody a pet dragon. I go, imagine you got a pet dragon. And what does fire do? Fire transmutes energy. So what if you just pulled out, like pretend to pull out of your mouth or your tummy or your heart or your brain, whatever the issue is, throw it in the dragon's mouth. The dragon does the fire and then farts out glitter.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
The glitter is what goes in the ether, because we don't want to send the trauma out to the ether. We want to transmute the trauma into a much higher frequency. And that's the glitter, right? Or they fart or shit rainbows or whatever they do, right? And it's just such a great thing. So it's so fun. You'll see me walk around the house sometimes and I get something, I throw it. And
Yeah.
my kids who are now 20 and 21 go, oh, Dragon's busy today, I see. My dragon's name is Ruby. Okay. So just hand it over.
Yeah,
I mean, this is why
absolutely.
God created these beautiful ascended masters and angels and these beautiful mystical creatures to guide us and help us. That's why he sent them to us, to aid us. Hand it.
I I love that. I love that analogy, Emma. I do. I really do. I love that. I
Thanks,
love it.
babe.
I
You
love the
can use
dragon.
that.
That's so cool.
You can tell the world about it. I love it too. It's so cool. Especially when kids have got nightmares. I tell them to draw two dragons, one angry dragon and one happy dragon, and put it beside their bed because the angry dragon with the fire is going to catch the nightmares. And then in the morning they're going to be happy because they've eaten. So
That's
people
so cool.
Yeah, so people say, oh, but the dragon's upset. No, dragon, that's what they do. They eat shit for breakfast.
Yeah.
That's how we need to fill them up. And I often imagine my Ruby, especially when I'm doing work on clients, I throw a lot of their trauma into Ruby's mouth and I can see her growing and growing energetically. She's growing, her belly's getting bigger and she's like, oh, mama, that's good, right? So she's having a good thing. She loves it. But I love, Mel, that we're on this same wavelength that you don't have to know the story of your trauma to release the trauma.
No, you don't. You don't. And in fact, the less you get in the way of it, the better. To be honest, it really is. The less you get in the way of it, we really are equipped to heal. That's how we were created.
Yes.
And so it's when we try to put our own analogy to it. You have to really understand you can do more than you think. And you can get through more than you think. And the less that you think, it's in some situations is actually better, because we do put our own analogies to it. And that comes from lots of reasons why we do that. But I think for me, once I made that decision, so there were two aspects. I had a beautiful husband who was just rock solid. He wasn't going to give up on me no matter how much I threw stuff at him. I think the next thing was that, I realized that I didn't need to try and heal myself, that God was perfectly capable of it, and I didn't need to try and do that. And the other thing that comes to my mind, Emma, and I think you probably share on this too, is acceptance. So acceptance of, yep, this happened. This was part of my life, but it doesn't have to be the end of my life. It doesn't have to be all that was my life. It was something that happened, and that's okay. It's okay. What those people did to me and did to my family was never okay. But what's okay is that I got through it. I don't have to feel bad or feel like I've got to do something to earn that position, that
And
position.
Melanie, I love that, we can turn our stories around to help others.
Absolutely.
Instead of happening to us, we sit there and go, well, actually, this happened for me, so I
Yeah,
can go into rapport or help somebody else.
absolutely. And I think that comes when we are honest with ourselves and say, okay, this was a part of my journey. Denying your feelings about those journey is not a good thing. Pretending, saying that I'm a survivor, and I did that for a long time. I had this mindset of, I was kind of like the Joan of Arc girl, I was constantly on a mission to fight. And I think for me, I learned to come to a place of realizing I didn't need to. It was okay. It was okay. And I love that. And I think that brought me to healing, and it brought me to a place to understand that I could achieve. I could go through life, and that it was okay that I could do that, because I'd always been told I was never going to be anything. And so with that came the shame of feeling like, oh, well, I don't deserve anything then. I'm not worthy of anything. And my husband definitely challenged that mindset. I'm going to share something very, very intimate, because I want people to see this. All right? I want people to understand the analogy of this. I too was ashamed of my body and ashamed of sharing that with my husband in full view. I was very much ashamed of that. I didn't want to be naked in front of my husband. My husband got me one night and he said, I want you to trust me. And he wrapped his arms around me and he stood me in front of a mirror, all right, completely naked. He said, I want to tell you what I see. And he went through every part of my body and told him how beautiful he thought that was and how amazing he felt that he could be close to me like that. How amazing he felt to be able to hold me from my smell, from my skin, from every part of me. He went right through the whole lot. He said, what does it matter what other people have or haven't said to you? Because you and I are together and this is how I see you.
Oh, what a man. I've got that song in my head. What a man, what a man. Yeah. What a mighty good man.
He's an amazing man. So imagine that, like, you know, that was incredibly healing. And now I can run around in front of him naked and it doesn't bother me at all, you know.
I know, isn't it funny? Like, we're 51 and I feel freer, more free in my body than I've ever felt in my life. And you'd think it would be the opposite, wouldn't you? You'd think at 51 you start calming down, at 21 you'd be a nutter, but it's completely the opposite for me. And it's so beautiful.
Yeah. That's exactly my experience too. My intimate relationship with my husband is better than it's ever been. And that's because I've got those connections now that I didn't have before. I can share with things with my husband I'd never have shared with anyone else ever in my life. I would have been so close to that. But he's just made me feel completely beautiful, completely valuable, like I am the most precious thing to him. And, you know, he just said to me, he said, Mel, you could leave me 1,000 times and what can I do but wait for you because you're the only thing I want.
Girl, you got to stop punishing this man, babe. Like, you've got to stop testing this man. Melanie, it has been amazing speaking to you. Thank you for coming on Inspired Conversations. Guys, you guys listen to this, please follow us on Facebook, Inspired Conversation. We're on all the social medias, Inspired Conversations. You'll find us on Spotify, YouTube, everything. You can actually watch these videos. We film them on Zoom. So if you don't want to just listen and watch them, but if this doesn't inspire you and give you a huge boost of hope and gratitude for where you've been, and you can heal. You can heal through anything. And Melanie is a testament to that. Melanie, where can people find you if they want to have a chat with you?
You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. And also my phone line's open. I'm on ICU2 Fashion.
ICU2. So it's a letter
capital I, capital C, capital U, number 2, and all capital letters for fashion. And our objective is to employ people with disabilities in design to be able to do images and designs that we will then go and sell, and they will get paid for that for the duration of the life of that garment. So
Woo, girl, you're amazing. Guys, thank you so much. This is Emma Romano and Melanie Eyels. It has been a pleasure here. We'll see you in the next episode. Love you. Mwah.
Love you too, gorgeous. Bye.